next group, go ahead and move on up to the table. Linda, if you want to move, I'm going to put the
Come sit next to me, Joe.
Get you.
Hey, so this is your panel for the 50s and 60s. Here with us. I want you to first begin just briefly, and we'll start with you, Linda, and tell us something that was a tradition in Gosport in the 50s and 60s.
Well, I think they used to have the movies in the park, and a lot of people would go to that. And I remember going down one time, but that's all I remember is walking down there. I don't remember anything else much, but that was one of the traditions that they had.
Good. What did you think, Carol Ann? What comes to your mind first?
On the movies on Saturday nights, but going to Jim Smith's drugstore to get ice cream cone. Every Saturday night, the whole family would go to do that, and that was a big treat. And it was in conjunction with the Ludies, which was really cool to go uptown and have that.
Okay. What about you, Dr. John?
Yeah, I think the thing I remember is that everybody in Gosport and in the community turned out for basketball games, whether we were any good or not. And Joe's team, there were some good teams, and then some of us were sort of mediocre. But you know, everybody in the community supported the high school basketball team. And so I always appreciate that. So I thought that's sort of a tradition. Bob Dayheff's there in the audience as well. Bob, did you think the community supported as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Did you play?
Yeah, he played.
Did you play?
He was a star.
He was a star. I played.
And Carol Ann was a cheerleader. Now, Linda, tell me a memory and as somebody that stands out in your mind as a super fan, loyal fan for Gosport in the Gosport gym.
I don't know.
Okay. What about you,
Where
Carol Ann?
high school
Gosport
was.
Gym.
A memory and maybe some super fan or two.
I do remember a memory back when we were seniors. I think they had a ping pong tournament, and it was Billy Sings and Jimmy Snodgrass. And I don't remember who ended up winning, but that was one of the things they'd have at lunch.
Well, memory in the gym. Well, I remember, of course, all the basketball games and all that sort of thing. I'll say I was a cheerleader for 3 years, and along with Jim and Roseanne Martin, who were twins, identical twins. And 1 year it was with Doris, and the other was Joe Kaler for the other 2 years. And of course, having twins on the squad was quite a novelty. And every time we would play the opposing team, well, at the halftime, the cheerleaders would always go over to greet each other. And of course, everybody wanted to talk to the twins. And Joe and I, or Doris and I, were just kind of on the sidelines because everybody wanted to get to know the twins. And so that's a memory that I have up in the gym, but also the Halloween carnivals we used to have.
Yes. Yes.
That was always a lot of fun. And you
Always
also had the king and the queen, and you had to put little jars out in town.
Mhm.
So who got the number of more money in the jar.
We always had to put down the tarp over the gym floor
to protect
so it would keep it cool.
Right. So those were great
Oh,
memories
yes.
out
yes.
in the gym.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dr. Tom?
I think as far as fans, I have to, Joe and John King, at least when I was in school, they were always at the ball games, always encouraging, all the sort of, but you know, the biggest fans, they were there, and you know, I remember them being so.
I remember the gym being, I thought, absolutely packed because Doris Krieger always wanted to hold me on her lap. and go through senior pictures that she had and eat a Vallow milk. But the stage was where I thought the real fans were, and there up front were June and Thelma.
That's right.
And besides Joe and John yelling at the refs, I know that June and Thelma were too. So that was good.
You guys have pep sessions?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Those were always fun as an elementary student, whatnot. You guys were over that.
About shook the walls down.
Carol, how did you cheer on the side? Because my memory is there was like, the line was right
Yeah,
near
the line's
Seaward.
right there, you know, the out of bounds line, you can't even, stand on the side. We had to kind of sit down during the game part, but then you get back up, but, yeah, the bleachers started where the boundary line was for out of bounds, so. But I have to tell you a real quick story about my mother and that gym. My mother was from Beech Grove, Indianapolis, and my dad and she met just at the start of World War II, and they married during World War II, and he was sent overseas and then came back, and they thought they were going to be living up there, but he was offered the job at the bank down in Gosport. So he brought her down here for a weekend, and they went to a basketball game up in the gym. And she walked in there and looked at that little cracker box, and she said, "This is just a little cracker box." Gym, can't believe they play in here. And she didn't want any part of it. And little did she know she was going to spend the rest of her life in the cracker box. Her perspective changed greatly, and she became a real advocate for the community. But that was her first impression. She couldn't imagine somebody coming down here.
Where was the school and gym located?
Up at the end of Main Street.
Back this way?
Yeah.
It's 8th Street.
8th Street.
8th
8th to 9th.
Yeah,
Okay.
8th to 9th Street.
Dr. John, what teacher would you say was instrumental in helping you? You had a tremendous work ethic, and you were a good student. But what teacher do you think was instrumental, maybe in guiding you to go on and achieve what you've achieved?
Well, Edna Montgomery by far was the one that pushed me. And in the 4 years, I had 5 years of math. And she and I looked at a physics book because I knew I would need physics if I were going into pre-med. And of course, at that time, there was no chemistry, no physics, and foreign language taught at Gosport. And so I knew it was going to be an uphill battle. But, you know, she sort of encouraged me, says, "You can do this." But she said, "You're going to have to work at it." But she and I sort of looked through a physics book. We take 2 or 3 hours a week and look at it. And she said, "Well, I don't know anything about physics either, but we'll learn together." And so we sort of leafed through the physics book, and that was my introduction to physics. But Edna was the one that I really give a lot of credit to along the way. And I had an opportunity to thank her son John at the recent alumni banquet about how influential she was.
Now, how many were in your class, your graduating class?
17.
17. And did she help Mark Lambert also?
Well, Mark was 2, I don't know.
Oh.
Mark was 2 years older.
Oh, I thought he was a 6. Okay,
Mark
got
was
it.
2 years older.
That's great.
And so...
She tutored me in geometry, and we never looked at a physics book. I was just holding on for dear life. Who was a teacher that was instrumental to you, Linda?
I liked Leona Whitaker. She's very sweet and everything. And I don't know how it come about, but anyway, I asked my grandmother to make taffy. And so she made taffy, pulled for me to give to Leona.
Isn't that nice? Yeah, that's great.
I did, but there was
She was instrumental in me becoming an event planner. We had an event, she let me organize it every week if we got all of our work done, and I got to tease her hairspray on her, and then Roger Moore would give a production with any and all of us that wanted to be in it. So it was great. Carol Ann, who would you say was your most fun teacher?
Most fun teacher. I can't remember somebody who was
Fun?
a lot of fun. I think I was too concentrating on, working and trying to get the grades to go to college and that sort of thing. But Edna Montgomery was the person the teacher I worked the hardest for.
Right.
Because it was challenging, and she didn't put up with any nonsense or anything else, and so she was the hardest taskmaster, I think. I don't remember.
And John, you live close to Lake Hollybrook. So tell us about, and some of the people that aren't familiar, I mean, it was like a dream to me. It was better than Lake Wawasee or Miami Beach to me. Tell us about some of the activities that went on there that you really enjoyed growing up.
Well, a little bit before my time was the drive-in theater that used to be just across from the entrance, or it's on the right-hand side. There's sort of a flat area where there's a brick house. Now, even as a kid growing up, this post where the speakers hung and that sort of thing were there. But then, the common area where there was a bar out there, as I understand, there was a big pier where we could swim, and I was out there, once the crops were laid by in the springtime, I was out there with my fly rod fishing for panfish, bluegills, and bass and that sort of thing on Lake Hollybrook. So there was a lot of fishing.
So could you swim across the width of it?
I don't know that I ever tried swimming across the width, but I'm sure I could.
Well,
it wasn't that wide, but I learned how to swim there for sure.
Well, Rosemary Smith, she's the one that told me about that she swam. She said you could swim the width of it, Kimberly. That's why we're taking you to swimming lessons. You're going to be able to swim the width of it, which I never did. But, because I trusted Rosemary somewhat. Oh, man. But anyway, she said she swam the width, and that a lot of people swam the width. Do you know anybody that swam the width of it, Linda?
No, I know
Ever heard of anybody?
I know that Mary, Wyatt's mother, went out there a lot because there was a lot of going on out there, I guess.
And the cabins. What do you know about the cabins? Do you remember anything about the cabins?
Well, Lynn Walters,
Yes.
Uli, had a house out there. That's where she lived with her grandparents. And her grandfather had a business in Indianapolis, so that was kind of their weekend home at first, but then they moved there permanently. And I was always invited out to Lynn's house to play, and she had a playhouse, and that was just spectacular. I thought that. But the biggest thing was in their living room, they had a pool table and a full bar at one end. And that's something I had never seen before, and that was something, especially in a house. And so when we were 8, 9, 10, we used to play nightclub.
Baptist church probably loved
that. Nightclub, and yes, and we used to dress up. I don't know where we got these ideas, but we'd dress up and go sit up on the stools at their bar. Perfect. And so that was part of Lake Hollybrook that I remember was that house. It was something else.
That's great. What is something that you remember about a best event or holiday in Gosport, Dr. John?
Well, there are many. Of course, at Christmas time, going to Christmas Eve service, they always handed out sack of candy. I thought that was pretty neat. But one of the things that I remember probably most was in springtime is plowing gardens. I would come into Gosport with a little Ford tractor and either a 2 or 3 bottom plow, and in a day's time I would plow 12 to 20 gardens. They weren't that big; they were maybe the size of this room, if that big. And that was always sort of a fun thing, and people were excited about getting, you know, their plants and their seed in the ground to have a big garden. So that was, springtime was a great time to be in Gosport.
Now, tell us about a garden, somebody in town, their garden that you thought was just fabulous.
I don't know that there was one better than another one. Some of them were bigger than others, but people took pride in growing their own food. And as a farm kid growing up, I thought that was a good thing. People need to grow their own food as much as they can. You don't need to go to the grocery store except to maybe get flour or sugar or something like that. But most, you know, we raised an awful lot of the food that we ate, you know, out by Lake Hollywood.
I always remember Bus, Sam, and Ma Kincaid's garden. I thought it was fabulous. And they worked hard at it, especially Bus and Sam. And I thought it was such a great garden. And I love to go see gardens. I try to get my dad to go down the Amish country and see gardens. I just think they're beautiful. And I love to see the growth and of what they have planted. Now, did your grandma, did she have a garden?
Yes, she did. We
That's
did a
great.
lot of canning and freezing, and yeah, she had a huge garden.
That's great. What about you, Carol Ann? Did you guys have a garden?
Well, we did not, but my grandparents did, Maggie and Rap Wright.
They had a perfect place. And
They
Brad
had
was
a
great.
big garden, and I remember going over and picking strawberries early in the morning, and I didn't like doing it because the dew was still on the stuff in my shoes, and my feet would get all wet. I wasn't much of a gardener, but always had watermelon and strawberries. And a big garden.
Can I interrupt a question? Dad, would you tell me about the property right almost by the river, about the cantaloupe and the watermelon, the grower, the guy that grew?
Oh, the one where we used to steal at
Yes.
night?
Well, how good it was and what you
Roger
did.
Crater. Anybody remember Roger
I do
Crater?
remember that name.
Yeah. We'd plant them and then we'd go in there where they were ripe and steal all the produce. Isn't that terrible?
But you told us that they were as good as you could get at Davis County. They were so delicious
Oh, yeah, they
because
were
of the
delicious.
sand.
The sandy loam.
The sandy lot and how wonderful that was.
Yeah.
That was Jeff Summit. Wasn't it?
Roger Crater had them.
And
Okay.
Roger had them also, but Jeff had them next to the road.
Yes.
And we were known to have some watermelon from there once in a while, illegally.
Whereabouts was that located?
Where was it
John
located?
Ellis'
John
house.
Ellis'
It's right
house.
next to the road.
I know where you're at, okay.
Okay, yeah.
I'll make one comment. My mother's garden, Laverne Brown's garden, was a great garden, and so was Lon and Stella Brown's garden. They lived up by Whitaker. There wasn't a weed anywhere, and Grandpa wouldn't let a weed grow in a fence row or that sort of thing. Everything had to be just right, but they really had a good looking garden.
My dad would come up with stuff for Michael and I to do to get up and get out in the garden, and we hated it. And now my yard, I have more flowers in it than probably everybody in Columbus. I'm out there pulling weeds on my hands and knees. So that's good. Okay, so let me ask you this, Linda. Name a club that you were in for us.
FHA.
Perfect. What about you, Carol Ann? High school club.
FHA.
Any others?
4-H.
Oh, yeah, I was in French too.
And
Girl Scouts.
Girl Scouts for a brief
Your
time.
mother was.
So can I
Yes.
tell a couple of memories?
Yes.
Because a couple of memories that I have still today that two people in here tonight made for me. And so I want to recognize that, this memory that I've had for a lifetime. My brother Ken was really into baseball. And I love baseball, and I got into it myself and would watch it on TV, but I fell in love with Mickey Mantle. And I joined Mickey Mantle's fan club, and I wanted to play, and my dad got me a mitt and everything for Christmas, and even took me to see the Yankees play in Chicago, and I think we went to St. Louis. And I wanted to play baseball in the worst way, and I could beg my way in to some of my brother's backyard games and stuff. Danny Swafford and some of the other kids he palled around with. But there were no sports for girls at school. But Martha Douglas, she organized some girls to play in the summer up on the school baseball field, and I got to play up there. And I think back to that a lot. I don't know, Martha, is she still in here? Oh, she is? Oh, darn. For taking the time to do that, because we wanted to be a part of something and a team, but that didn't exist. But she got us organized enough to play during the summers, and I appreciate that. And then some of my friends had older girls that they looked up to and that would do things with them and all that, sort of take them places and kind of acknowledge their presence even though they were younger. I didn't have anybody like that. And I was looking for somebody that maybe would pay some attention to me. And the Hunsicker girls all drove tractors back and forth from the field down to their house and came up 4th Street on their way to the fields. Then with the wagons went back down towards their house and the barns and the all. And so they would pass our house there on 4th Street every day, several times a day. So I got the idea that if I went out and I sat on the curb and watched them coming and going and coming and going, maybe they might ask me to ride along. So I went out there one day and I sat and they went by. Of course, we waved and all that sort of thing. Well, it wasn't catching on yet, so I decided that, okay, well, this time I'm going to look real sad. And then when they wave, I'll go. So the next trip up, Marilyn, she stops and asked if I would like to ride on the tractor. So I ran in to make it okay with my mom, and I came back, and I climbed up on that tractor, and she let me ride with her up and down the street for all the rest of the trips that day. And that just made me feel really grown up and important to somebody that day. And so I thank you, Marilyn, for that childhood memory that I'll never forget.
I want to ask you two girls something real fast. I want to say something to you. Part of this, John, you'll be able to answer too. Because I think of you girls, and I think of this, and I think of Julie, Lambert, and the twins and everybody. Dick Clark. What did you guys do? Did you ever meet with anybody when Dick Clark was on? And tell us about it.
I'd just be by myself, but anyway, I'd watch it every evening right home from school. But I don't never remember dancing with anybody or anything, you know.
Well, of course I watched it every afternoon as soon as I got home.
Me too.
And so I was taking it all in as you would watch people dancing and all that sort of thing. Well, our class had a sock hop. And it was actually a class party, but it was a sock hop to it. And so I was there, and John was there with someone else.
Before your time. Still in the 6th grade.
No. So he came over and asked if I would dance. Well, I'd never danced before. I didn't know how to dance. But when he asked me, and he knew what he was doing, so I took his hand and we started to dance, and I danced real close because on Dick Clark's American Bandstand, that's how they dance. And later, he told me that he thought he had really found a winner because of the way I danced, the first dance.
Well, I remember
The rest is history.
And the rest is history.
I remember Julie and Nancy Myers and the twins, they would be down and watching Dick Clark, and they'd let me come down because I just lived up the street. I don't know, I was 5 or 6. And we'd all dance, and they knew all the couples. And then Julie got to go to the prom. And I thought, man, she is going with the top dog. I can't believe it. My grandma was so happy, and Olive. And here he comes in his tuxedo and his boutonniere, and it was Mike Wall. And I thought Mike was like, oh my gosh, he could be a movie star and a dancer on Dick Clark for sure. Yeah. Oh.
Right there in town.
John, tell us if you, I don't know if you were involved in this or not, what do you think of when you think of Redwood?
The skating rink.
Yeah.
Skating rink, because we used to go out there, and then it was the place to go after a home ball game. We'd go out, the whole team would go out, and we'd have burgers and fries and things like that. It was always a great place to go. So those are my memories in addition to the roller rink.
Yeah. Did you skate?
Yes.
Yeah. I bet you were a good skater too, weren't you?
I don't know. I could hold my own.
Over the rail?
Yeah. The thing I remember about Redwood is the ice skating. They had a pond there, and of course it froze over in the wintertime, and they would have a big barrel that they put wood in and had a fire going out there. But I remember ice skating out there at night, and hearing the ice crack and how that makes that sound. But it was so much fun because people from the town would come out and skate around, and that's how my parents met, ice skating up at the Coliseum in Indianapolis. So they were always into ice skating, and so they take us out there. And so I remember ice skating more.
Lake Hollybrook was a great place to
And
ice skate
ice skating.
because you had a much larger area to skate.
Did anybody drive over Lake Hollybrook
Oh, yeah.
on the ice?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
There weren't many, but there were some.
Yeah, I knew you would. And also drive through the river when you're not supposed to besides
No,
the
I didn't drive the
Hollybrook.
river.
That's great. Alyssa, how much time do you have?
We've got about 10 minutes. You can ask
Oh,
questions
good.
to me.
Does anybody have a question that they would like to ask?
I'd like to ask John how he and Ron White really painted my house.
I know that.
Not only we painted twice,
Yeah.
as I recall, and I think you asked Ron first, and then Ron and I, of course, not only he was a great coach and turned out to be a great friend, but he said, "Do you want to help me paint Joe's house?" And I said, "Well, I haven't done an awful lot of painting, but can't be that hard." Yeah, Ron.
And we've risked all these valuable hands on top of the roof.
Leaning
Oh,
back,
I don't know.
on the side of the eave, 3 stories up, you know.
He did all these.
Yes.
Carol Ann used to come up and paint the sashes on the window. I would subcontract her to help paint the windows. I hated the window stuff. So.
I was just seeing the cords hanging up there. Did you folks
Oh yeah.
do those?
Yeah.
Tell
Still have mine.
us first about you. We know about the girls more. Tell us about the boys, how they felt about the senior chords and how you got yours together.
Oh, well,
What you decided to put
two
on
older
those
brothers who had gone before, so, you know, you put your athletic events that you were in, if you were in 4-H, that sort of thing there. If you had a girlfriend at the time, which I did, you had her picture or likeness or her name or whatever on your cords. I can't remember what else. I'll have to pull mine out of the closet.
Can you still get into it?
No. I can get into them, but I can't button.
What about you, Carol Ann?
I still have mine, yes. Yeah, I just remember going out there and thinking, oh, you know, this is what you do when you're a senior, and feeling like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Wasn't there somebody that was an expert at doing these senior
Yes,
chords for you?
Mrs. Hall lived out on Lake Hollybrook Road.
I thought that, but it was exciting, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
Were
I
you-
look forward to that.
Were you
Wyatt
excited,
and I
Linda?
have, there was an article about, they were wanting senior chords over there around IU. And so we donated ours. And then, I think it was Sue Trotman giving me the little article about it. But they had me down as living somewhere else. Instead of Gosport, like Cloverdale.
Well, I was sad because I grew up watching all of them have their
Yeah.
chords, and I was waiting for my turn, and they quit doing it when I became a
Is
senior.
that right, huh?
So I never got my chord.
Well, any of us that missed out, maybe we can get some this year
Yeah,
and wear them
maybe
next year.
There are a lot of kids talking about doing that nowadays, trying to get it going again. Yeah.
What is it?
What, the senior
Those
chorus?
first and dance with
They're corduroy.
They're corduroy.
I did those in their senior year.
Huh. And some people have their.
It might have been just a, a tradition, a regional tradition.
Wyatt had on the back of his white.
White. He was a skinny mini, wide load. Yeah. Tell us, I just got some today, so tell us who you think, we're gonna start with you, Linda, who is the best pie baker in Gosport?
Besides Wyatt.
Yeah,
Yes.
besides what, it would probably been like, somebody way back, I'm trying to think who it would be.
Think about it. Carolyn, who do you think?
Well, I love my mother's butterscotch pie.
Oh, yeah.
And
Like-
now my son-in-law has learned to make that, and he
Does a
makes
good
it
job.
for me.
Does he make the crust?
Yeah, oh, yes.
Yeah, that's
So,
my
the tradition lives on.
My grandmother was a great pie maker.
I was gonna say she,
And the gooseberry root.
That's what I was gonna tell you. I thought she made gooseberry.
She did.
And you know what I had today from a great farm wife that was a 4-H leader for decades? Apple rhubarb, and it's delicious.
Really?
It was really interesting and very good. John, your mom, of course.
Yeah. It's
But
hard to beat mom's pie. And then my grandmother Stella,
Yes.
who worked at the plant, sewed tarpaulins and tents and all that sort of thing. She was a great cook as well. So made great berry pies, particularly blackberry and raspberry pies. That I would frequently pick the berries, and then she'd make the pies.
I remember my grandmother saying the first pie she ever made, she was 10 years old.
I wanted to add with John, when I was writing my cookbook and I was talking to your mom about recipes and she shared a couple with me. And, my memory of holidays and food center around your mom making the donuts for the Baptist church for Halloween. That to me was always, the greatest thing for my childhood was we could smell them. Jane Ellen Burns and we would be out collecting money for UNICEF, and
Yes.
we could smell them as we're coming through the door. We couldn't wait.
Her secret for donut making, and she made a great donut, but in the frosting, she would grate orange peel. And she would add a little bit of orange peel to that, and that really set the donuts off.
Yes.
And of course, Joanne is the only one, and have you made her donuts? And not recently, but early.